Welcome back to Dr. Rob Pediatrics. We're over halfway done of the 7 questions for teens. And as we say in Delaware, we don't really have any sayings in Delaware whatsoever. What we have is the Delaware pause. You say you're from Delaware to a group of people from around the country and you get this long pause because there's no local food to talk about, no big landmark to talk about, just kind of silence, although now maybe someone will mention President Biden. Anyway, I'm glad you came back. And sponsor number 4 today is Willie the Wildcat and NU Barbie. It was a gift. I wasn't creepy buying a Barbie doll. And of course, Daenerys Targaryen, and lastly, Danny Zuko. So, question number 4. Olivia, do you want to gain weight or do you want to lose weight? I actually start asking this question even at 7 or 8 years of age. Now, when I'm in the room, I don't like to mention a child's exact weight or necessarily the change from the year before. And I don't really like to show a lot of kids their growth charts, especially if they're a bit heavy. They don't need to tell me that they're overweight. They already know. And I really don't like to emphasize body mass index. The BMI is a math formula that was invented in the 1830s in Europe for old white men to get life insurance. It's not good for women, it's not good for children, and it isn't good for athletes. But unfortunately, the insurance companies are obsessed with the BMI. And the war on childhood obesity with BMI report cards from schools, I think, does more harm than good. So this question, do you want to gain weight, you want to lose weight, really touches on all the weight issues, especially vital during this pandemic where both obesity and eating disorders are skyrocketing. And with obesity, we're not talking about just a pandemic 20. We're talking about 30, 40, 50, 70, 90 plus pounds gained during the pandemic in the past year. Now, if I have a teen with a weight in the suggested recommended range, and I ask them they want to gain or lose weight, they often say, I don't know, or nothing. And to which I say, that's great. Your weight is great. But if you're growing, you're going to have to gain weight as you keep getting taller. But we want it to be healthy. That means good eating habits and good exercise. Now, for underweight teens, I'm also trying to see if there is a body image issue. But teens with eating disorders are savvy enough to never say, oh, I just want to keep losing weight. The biggest change in answers to my question about weights over the years has been in guys and even younger boys who often say they just want to gain weight. It's often tied to sports, to football, to lacrosse. I've had 9 or 10-year-olds tell me that they want to get a six-pack, which is kind of weird. For these older teens who want to keep getting weight for sports, I talk about the danger of gaining weight too fast. But it's particularly frustrating when I'm telling them this and then their coach, especially for the linemen in football, are telling them, get bigger, get bigger, get bigger. Some of the other kids who just want to get these huge pecs and these huge arms, I do warn them that 10 or 20 years from now, those become man boobs and it may not be a great look. Now, when I ask teens who are obviously obese if they want to gain weight, they often look at me like I'm crazy, like, of course I want to lose weight. And then their mom looks at me like they're crazy. But I don't want to assume anything. And then I ask them, okay, how much do you want to lose? And if they say 30 pounds, 50 pounds, I say, okay, but if they're still growing, we want to stop the gain. We want to stop the rate of the gain so they gain weight slower as they keep getting taller and taller. And then we could talk about maybe losing some weight. I do like to emphasize that short-term diets never, ever work. And especially in the long term, those kids with short-term diet losses not only gain it back, but they often gain even more. So it really isn't a recipe for good long-term health. The key, as they know, is developing good eating habits and good exercise habits. But actually, the eating habits is the most important. And beware any doctors out there who are hawking diet weight loss books. They all suck, and they know who they are. For overweight teens, I try to emphasize, again, nutrition advice with some specific questions like, what are you drinking for lunch? What are you drinking with dinner? And try to make sure it's water. Any juice, even all natural juice, and certainly all the lemonade and the iced tea they're drinking, has a lot of added sugar. And diet drinks can even be worse because they have artificial sweeteners. Your tongue tastes the sweetness. It sends signals down to your gut and your microbiome. Hey, here comes the sugar, but the sugar never arrives. And then the gut sends signals to your brain, eat more. That's why a lot of people who drink diet soda all the time are always surprised that they're gaining weight, but there's a reason for it. So we do discuss eating smaller portions, and especially less eating out if possible. You can always make healthier choices when you eat out, but it's always, almost always, healthier to eat at home. And if they're eating a lot of junk food, chips, cookies, French fries, ice cream, donuts, I like to ask, well, who's buying that junk food? Who's bringing it in the house? They're not usually going out. And they almost always look over to their mom and dad, but sometimes everybody in the room blames grandma. And sometimes, honestly, it is grandma who's feeding all the junk food to the kids. Now, having processed and sugary foods in the house is just not a good idea, especially if people are struggling with their size. And in America, it's the added sugar that's the main issue, not the fats. So maybe these teens can go shopping with their parents, especially ideally if they consult with a nutritionist first, and even better if appropriate if they're in a pediatric weight management program. And obviously for a lot of these kids, you need to screen for hyperlipidemia, type 2 diabetes, and screen for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I do like to point out there is a huge genetic component to most obesity and weight gain. And these kids probably have friends or even more tough siblings who lay around, eat junk all day, never exercise, and they're built like a stick. These people are really annoying, and it's not fair at all, especially when it's their brother or sister. But they just need to eat better, and they need to exercise more than these friends or siblings. And the bad nutrition and exercise habits on these thinner people will eventually catch up to them in the long run. I particularly stress, and I think it's important for parents and the teens to hear, that I would rather them be heavier than they want to be and be happy than to be miserable. And overweight kids, obese kids, yeah, they should get dessert sometimes, and they should get special treats sometimes, but they got to be more careful about it, and they have to watch their portion control. And then there's the teens with disordered eating or eating disorders. It's not uncommon for teens and adults with anorexia to say that the first spark of an eating disorder was in their pediatrician's office when they showed them their growth charts, or they called them a little bit chubby. So I think us pediatricians have to be really careful about the words that we use with young adults and teens. Not that it's an either or, but again, after doing this for 30 years, I'd rather someone be chronically overweight than to be struggling with an eating disorder. And there's still way too much fat shaming in our society. Kids with eating disorders really need to be referred early, if possible, to multidisciplinary programs that help the whole family. These teens are usually very smart and successful in everything they do. It's rare for me to see someone with an eating disorder who isn't a straight A student. So when they put their mind to something, they really stick to it. If they want to try to starve their body, they do a really good job of starving their body. And it's really challenging for us pediatricians and certainly for the families. Someone with anorexia, if they gain a little weight, if you say to them, hey, you look a little better, they hear, hey, you've gotten more fat. So it's kind of upside down land, and it really is a big challenge. And this is often a life-threatening condition. And in the short term, I don't care of the specifics of what they eat. Just get them to eat something. I don't care if it's junk food. Any food is good food. And if you push them too hard, they push back harder. So lastly, anybody out there remember Little Lotta comic books? Probably not, because I'm old. but it was a comic about a little zoftig young lady named Lotta who protected the weak, and she beat up bullies, and her huge appetite gave her superhuman powers. It was pretty progressive for the 60s to have a female, overweight, toughy hero. She was way ahead of her time and way more interesting than Dot. And maybe 2 people out there got that reference. Okay, get ready for the final 3 questions, including drugs and sex. Good night, Moon.